Tyler, welcome to your living room.
How's it going?
Thanks
Welcome to my living room.
Thanks for joining me.
Of course.
Can you start by telling us who you are?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I'm still trying to figure that out. I recently just wrote this book, Bleed Through Tales from Another Timeline, which kind of tells the story of my life from age 24 on after my mother passed away. But it doesn't really go into who I am and like my life growing up because obviously that part of my life, I feel like I was somebody I wasn't. I was attached to this fake identity that I had created for myself to fit into this world, right? And I always like squeezed into some mold, and I showed up as somebody that I knew everyone was expecting to see, but I never felt like myself. And it wasn't until my mother passed away and I started actually getting attacked. It was in my like psychic attacks and sleep paralysis at night, and it was a rude awakening. It was like awakening through adversity, if you want to call it that. But I was basically forced to believe in things that I didn't believe in. And I had to learn how to overcome what was happening to me by, developing tools and modalities and practices and that required me to expand my mind and open myself to other things that I had always laughed at my whole life because I just thought it was nonsense, to be honest. At one point, the whole spiritual paranormal world. I mean, I always kind of believed there was something there, but I really got into this like arrogant mindset when I was a young adult, and I just thought I knew everything. And boy, was I wrong,
Was your mother's passing connected with the awakening?
Yeah, that's what started it. Yeah, if it wasn't for like as soon as she passed away, almost immediately I started getting attacked in my sleep. And prior to that, nothing had ever happened.
Do you know why that is?
Well, I've been on a mission to discover that for a long time, but I think I've come to. I mean, I have a few explanations that might bring some understanding to the situation, but I don't know if it's actually the truth of the matter. One of the things I've discovered through a channeling session was the fact that my, my mother passed away. I started getting attacked, like demonically attacked, and sleep paralysis, shadow people, the succubus, all that stuff. And it was explained to me years later in a channeling session that it was basically, we're here on this planet. This is a war for our soul, right? And that's like after the last cataclysm, that's what's happening at this point. It's a war for your soul. And they don't just stop going after your soul while you're alive, because they do. And there's like soul fragmenting and soul splitting and the consciousness splitting and all that stuff. But it was described in that session that they were basically trying to use me as bait to trap my mother's soul during her transition phase. So I guess
Oh, wow.
there's like this 3 day window or something. I don't know if that's true, but there's this 3 day window after you pass where it's like this transition phase. And in that phase, they were trying to trap her soul, and they were attacking me, knowing that she wouldn't be able to stand seeing her son suffer and be tortured in such a way. So they were hoping to draw her in, lure her in to come to my rescue and trap her soul. That's what came through. And I haven't come up with a better explanation because I don't have an explanation as to why it would just suddenly happen, um, just suddenly, And the only
Yeah.
other person, somebody did tell me one time, they said maybe it was because like my mother was carrying some entity when she transitioned that left her and found its way to me.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's possible, but the other explanation feels a little like it makes a little more sense to me.
Or perhaps there's like the Harry Potter explanation where like your mom was when she was alive, she was able to project some sort of love field that stopped that type of thing, and then when she left, then it opened the door to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So maybe she was creating some form of protection while she was alive, was what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's another possibility. I don't actually know. Um,
yeah. It's always interesting like how people get their awakening moments. You know, mine was this 800-year-old tree. I was in Bali and in the jungles, and put my hands on this tree, and it was like started getting telepathic information. And I'm similar to you in that I had scientific materialist training, and so spirituality wasn't really a thing that I considered much until all the dominoes started to lead to the next thing.
Right.
So what time, like what year was this?
This was 2011.
Okay. Yep.
No,
So
2010.
2010.
2010, yeah.
And I also, in reading this book, I feel like I got to know you
Right.
because there's a lot of personal stuff. And gosh, you went through so many things that sound really challenging.
Yeah.
Um, and when we first met, um, like a year ago when we were at your conference and then at the Universal Connections, I felt like you had this sort of like wariness about each person you were meeting. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
who you are, so I'm going to like get comfortable with you slowly.
Right.
And now I can totally see why, because it's like kind of a messes with your mind a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, that's a great observation because that's absolutely the way I am with people. And I've been told that too. Like they said, when I met you, you look like you didn't trust me at all. Like you were, and I guess I don't mean to come across that way, but I've learned the hard way a number of times that not everybody is who I thought they were, and especially doing this work in the disclosure community and bumping shoulders with a lot of these people and interviewing military whistleblowers and people ex 3-letter agency whistleblowers and all the above, you name it. There's eyes on you. And sometimes I believe that when it might seem silly to think, oh, why would they come after us? But after it happened to me, I was like, oh, it's not that silly. Like they really do try to like thwart this awakening and disclosure, right? So anything they can do, and how do they do that? Well, they're not going to overtly come out and kill us. I mean, unless we're really like over the target with some politician or celebrity, right? Um, and then at that point, that's an entirely different story. But what we're doing is, I feel like the best way to silence somebody like us would be to send somebody into your personal life under the guise of a boyfriend or girlfriend or business partner or whatever it is. And, for anybody who's doing this stuff. And it might, you may never know. And the person who comes into your life might not even know that they're being somehow manipulated as well. And you'll know by the fruits of their labor, right? You'll know just pay attention to what happens in your life when a person like that enters your life. Are you basically, I don't know how to word this. I put it in my book and I can't remember how I even said it. But basically, are they serving your mission? Or are you serving their mission, right? Like is there an agenda there? And I learned the hard way that some situations in my life seem to be very strategically set up to pull me off course. But at the end of the day, it didn't pull me off course because it actually forced me to go within and learn a lot about myself. And there were some hard lessons. And I got to see an entirely different world that exists that I would have never seen otherwise. And with that, I walked away with all that wisdom to share with my audience and anyone who reads my book, that this stuff is real and it can happen to any of us.
Part of the beginning of the book, or in the first part, there's this guy that's like feeding you information, and you're mentioning this local park that I know pretty well, Jefferson Barracks Park.
Yes.
I do a lot of cycling training in that loop around the park. So I thought that was kind of cool. It was to have that, a lot of St. Louis stuff mentioned in the book. But this guy came in and was kind of like your friend, kind of feeding you insider information, and then he disappeared. And what's your perspective on that person at this point?
At this point, well, I guess we should rewind. Do you want me to tell any of that story?
Yeah, as much as you want. It's pretty fascinating.
Okay, yeah. So it was a friend, I would consider a friend at one point. We worked together in construction for years, and he lived not far from here. And
Mhm.
he would actually come pick me up here, or I would go to his house and we would carpool to work. And we just laugh and joke. We were big hockey fans, so we always talked about hockey. Nothing, it was all surface level stuff. And, we weren't always on the same job site. So one day I was working and I heard through some people that he had got escorted off the job by some black government vehicles, came, SUVs, whatever. They showed up on the job site and basically escorted him off the job site. Nobody knew what happened. Everybody had a guess and a theory, but no one knew. And he kind of went quiet for a while, and everyone was just he became like the scuttlebutt at work, at break and lunch. Everyone would talk about him, and it was just when he just became like the conversation piece. And I didn't partake in. A lot of people were, kind of making fun of him because he started posting stuff that would seem crazy at the time in 2017, that would literally make you look crazy on Facebook. And back then, I thought the same thing. But really, what I realize now is he was either being fed information or he was going through an awakening. And when you start posting the truth out there online, it makes you look crazy, right? So he was doing that on Facebook suddenly. Like after he leaves the job, suddenly he starts posting this stuff, talking
Mhm.
about how like cloning is real, like Princess Diana was a clone or was murdered, and or she's
Which
still,
is like really timely because last week
yes.
Trump retruthed that post about
Right.
Biden being a clone.
Right. Yeah. So that was, yeah, I started to say that wrong. So what he said was Princess Diana was still alive and they used a clone to act out the tragedy. Well, that was one of the things he posted online.
Mhm.
And he was posting a lot of stuff about Trump at the time, which is triggering people. But it made him look crazy. But I didn't want to make fun of him because I knew the guy. And so I would listen to everybody. And then one morning, I ended up deciding to take my dog for a walk up at that park. And I just pulled in the lot. And sure enough, I pulled right next to Larry. He was two spots over in his truck. And I looked over and I was like, Larry? And he said, you showed up. And I said, what do you mean I showed up? He's like, you don't think you're here by accident, do you? I was like, what are you talking about? And the whole thing was weird. So we got out of our cars and I was like, what happened to you at work? And he's like looking around, like over his shoulder. He's all nervous. He's like, I got to watch what I say. They're listening. They've been following me. I'm like, who? And he's like, you see that guy by the tree over there? He's got an earpiece and he's been following me all morning. And I look over and there's like this random tree and this guy's like stretching and like almost at the same time, he's like adjusting this earpiece. Like clearly that's what he was doing. Or he was itching his ear really awkwardly. Um, and I was like, what is going on? I was like, what happened to you? And he told me that he said, yeah, I threatened to murder or behead Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton for being murderers and pedophiles. And I was like, okay, but I'm thinking to myself, everybody like jokingly talks about like hating politicians or wishing the worst on them and stuff, but no one's getting escorted off a job site for doing it. So in what capacity did you make this threat? And he had a newspaper article that he pulled out that I didn't even know about. It was a small segment, but it's like man arrested for uh, threatening to behead the president and whatever, blah, blah. So I'm just like, okay, this is weird. Like, what's going on? And he started sharing all this stuff with me that at the time I didn't know about or believe in or anything, that like weather warfare. And he's like, they don't even need him by the tree listening to us because they can listen to us from the satellites. And he was just telling me about all these crazy technologies and underground cities and clones and um, parallel timelines and like just information overload. And I was just like, whoa, what's going on? And then it got really crazy when he told me that he was going to Mars. He told me he was being recruited to
This is like over a series of time, not
yeah,
just
yeah.
like in the park on that first day.
Not in the parking lot. I'm sorry. Yeah. If I were to tell the whole entire story step by step, we'd be here all day. But yeah, so over time, yeah, it started off in the parking lot as just he was telling me certain things.
How do you think what was the reason that he said you finally showed up? Did they like send you subliminal messages to make you want to go to that park at that time, or what do you think happened there?
Yeah, so that's the interesting part. And I don't know. to answer it, honestly, I don't know. But there were a number of occasions throughout that summer where he seemed to know exactly what I was doing or where I was. And a very eerie case, and it was very eerie sometimes.
Hmm.
And I would receive text, and there's certain things that I'm like, it's just like, dude, watching me, or like, what's going on? It didn't make sense, but I don't know how he knew I was going to be there
Hmm.
or what that looked like, but he seemed to know I was going to show up there that morning. And he told me eventually that he had been basically recruited to go join this Mars program to go basically preserve the human race on Mars, to go colonize Mars and populate Mars, and some sort of a breeding program. He didn't say breeding program, but the way he was describing it to me, he was like, yeah, they told him that there was going to be all these women up there, and like he was going to be able to like have all the sex and stuff. And I've heard that from other testimonies, like there's brothels and stuff on the moon and Mars, if you believe in the secret space program. And there is very much of a forced breeder program type of thing going on. And that's how it's like an incentive to keep you working or keep you doing what you're doing, because then you get to come home to a woman, right? So, yeah, that's what he told me that he was recruited to do. And somehow or another, he was told by his superiors, who he would never reveal at the time, who was handling him, that they were extending that invite to me. And the entire summer became him adamantly and actively trying to recruit me and talk me and convince me to join in this Mars program with him.
Did you want to do it?
I was very interested and curious, but I knew I was never going to go. But I wanted to know I wanted to see how far I could take it, because I didn't even believe in that stuff really at the time. But also part of me believed in it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like I could tell he had such conviction, and he wasn't lying to me. I could feel it. Like he believed everything he was saying, and it was true for him. And that's what made it real for me. So I thought he was nuts, but I'm like, where's this coming from? I've known Larry all this time, and he didn't it's just like, somebody flipped a switch. And then I did ask him, I was like, how do you know all this stuff all of a sudden? He goes, I don't know. I just hear voices in my head. It tells me stuff. And then I didn't know about voice to skull or voice of God technology back then. But now I believe very much so that that's what was being used on him. He was just being fed information. And because he knew about things that I don't even know how he could have known about. And back then he started telling me about a fake alien invasion that was going to be coming, and they were going to use holograms, tangible holograms, he called them. They would be so real you could actually touch them. And he told me there's already an infrastructure in place for these holograms that just need to basically turn it on, and it'll appear to be a fleet of UFOs. And he said all the buildings, or not all the buildings, there are a number of buildings are pre-rigged with explosives to detonate as like a holographic laser gets fired at the building. It's not a real laser, but they'll hit the button for the explosion.
Demolish it.
Yeah. And he explained to me that they were strategically planning on blowing up escape routes and evacuation routes and stuff to keep people trapped in cities in the event that this fake invasion happened. This was all in 2017. This is before I heard about all the fake alien invasion stuff, but he sure seemed to know a lot about it back then. And there's just one example of the things he would tell me. And I don't know if you want to interject, I can keep going. But
yeah, gosh. Do you, the voice of God technology, it occurs to me a lot of people get messages from their guides, like auditory, clair audience messages, right? From whoever. Is there a way to tell the difference?
Yeah, because I think I've had the technology used on me before, which I talk about in my book. Well, in some cases, they don't have to put a voice in their head. They can give you physical ailments too. It's like shooting a direct energy weapon at you. And they can target and pinpoint certain areas in your body. They can create a rash. They can create anxiety. They can create all kinds of stuff, right? Back pains, doesn't matter. And I've had it used on me in that capacity. I'm nearly positive, including they can give you a heart attack and stuff like that. And that's not even a theory. Like the CIA has a heart attack gun. You can go research it. It's a gun. They just point at somebody and can literally induce a heart attack. And that was in the 60s. So who knows what they're capable of. So I've explained in my book a number of cases where I think that has happened to me. And then a few different times I've heard a very clear auditory voice in my head. It's like you're wearing headphones, but you're not, like in your head, and you hear someone else's voice and very clearly. And that's happened to me twice. And in both cases, I don't think it was organic. I don't feel like it was like one of my guides talking to me or
Mhm.
something. Because I've had that happen too. Like my mother passed away, and like she's come to me before, and it comes with this whole beautiful feeling of love, and like your
Mhm.
body has this reaction, and you're like connecting with her on a soul level, and like you're getting these impressions and these downloads, and it's like telepathy in a way, and it's beautiful. And the voice of God is just like a radio.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's the difference.
Yeah, wow. And so this guy Larry just disappeared one day.
Yeah. So after a long summer of convincing me to go join him and telling me about time travel programs and parallel timelines and all this weird stuff, he basically told me that, he was told that the world was going to end on Labor Day of 2017, and there was going to be some catastrophic event. So they had to leave before then. And he believed it. And so as it got closer, he got like more and more focused on his efforts to like convince me. And I was
Mhm.
like, Larry, dude, I'm not going to Mars with you. And he eventually, Labor Day came and went, and nothing happened. And I was at work the next week, and he sends me a text. And I mean, this is a whole other story, but basically, he told me the ship sails on Saturday, and I knew what he meant by that. And he always told me to have a bag packed and just have it with like essentials, like family photos, things you want to remember. Nothing like practical, just like memorabilia type of stuff
Okay.
that you want to remember your family by and stuff. He was very like his like bring pictures and don't like bring stuff to remember Earth. And so he always wanted me to have a bag packed as far as that goes. But he basically the last day I ever saw him, I came home from work. I'm skipping a whole part of this story, but it's in the book if anyone wants to hear it all. Um, I came home from work, and my dog was outside, and my dog couldn't get outside unless somebody let her out, right? And there was no cars at my house. And I'm like, how the heck did she get out? So I come and unlock the front door here, and I open the door, and Larry is literally sleeping on my couch right here. And I'm like, Larry, what the fuck are you doing in my house? Like, I was pissed. I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? And he told me he had this whole story. Like, they were targeting him hard that day. So he parked his truck over at Best Buy and he walked here. I'm like, they know you come here. It's the worst hiding spot ever. And he's like, oh, by the way, I took a shower. I mean, he had been like hanging out in my house all day, and I was at work. And like, had it been anyone else, I would have called the police. But again, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. And then he goes right back into like saying, hey, like the ship sails tomorrow. I'm like, what do you mean the ship? He was like, I don't know, but we leave tomorrow. And he's like, are you coming or not? I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, well, will you at least take me back to my truck? So I took him back to his truck, and he got out of my Jeep, got into his truck, and he rolled his window down. And before he pulled off, he said, I'll see you on the other side, and took off. And I'm fully expecting to hear from him again. And he went missing for 7 years after that. And nobody heard from him. I had guys at work looking into it. Did he get arrested? Was he in jail? Was he homeless? Was there an obituary? It just seemed like nobody knew where he was, but he wasn't filed as a missing person either.
Mhm.
And then 7 years later, 2024, he shows up on Facebook and sends me a friend request again. And I assume it's him. It, it was his picture, you know. And I I accepted their friend request eventually after like a couple of months because they gave me this whole weird feeling.
Mhm.
Because the whole time while that was happening, I was being targeted too, and it wasn't necessarily a great time. And I kind of had PTSD thinking about it, and I was like, I'm not even going to open that door again. And I finally accepted his friend request, and then one day I just got this real bad feeling. I don't know if it was paranoia or what, but I just decided to randomly block him. I'm like, I don't even want to like. I didn't even like seeing his profile. You know what I'm saying? It just
Mhm.
brought back bad memories. And so I just blocked it. And then that's where we're at today. So apparently he's back. And I haven't opened that door again to see anything, to see what actually happened. But I've had some weird dreams surrounding that, which, it's just a dream, but still, I don't know. I probably should talk to him and see where he went because, if he didn't go to Mars, which he probably didn't, but that's what he believed anyway, or he went somewhere for 7 years
Mhm.
and he just pops
Yeah.
back up on the radar.
Yeah. Wow. How much of you mentioned like being targeted and psychic attacks and all this stuff, and I know you learned to protect yourself and center and ground yourself and be at peace. But like to be able to write this book and like process through all those challenges, um, where are you at? Like, are you able to talk cleanly about all the stuff in your book, or does some of it still like bring up?
Well, writing the book helped a lot. That's another great question. Well, it was actually hard to write parts of the book. It brought back tears, and you relived some of those moments. And sometimes I could only write a couple of paragraphs, and I had to put it down for a couple of days. And because I'm reliving some of this stuff, sometimes I literally was like sobbing and like reliving some of these moments. And it was very healing writing all that. And I realized after going on a little book tour interview after the book came out, or interview tour, um, that it wasn't actually that fun for me to answer all these, like talk about all this stuff.
Mm,
And everybody wanted to ask these questions as if it's some sort of a sci-fi story because it sounds like it. But there's a reality to it for me that came with a lot of hardships and trauma and
mhm,
emotions. And when I talk about it, it's like I put myself back in that frequency, and I've done a lot of work to overcome all that and climb and
mm,
heal from that. So it's a really interesting thing. I don't mind talking about it, and I'll answer any question and talk about anything in the book. I knew that releasing it,
mm.
but it's harder than I thought actually to talk about some of the stuff without feeling like it's still energetically impacting me on some level, when I
Yeah,
re-enter that frequency.
yeah, and you're right. It does read like a science fiction book. So many things blew my mind. Like,
Mhm.
I just want to acknowledge you again for like coming through, like just making it through all that gauntlet of
Right.
so many crazy things. What uh, what parts of the book do you, and as it relates to your broader place where you are in life, like what parts do you want to talk about? What are you excited to talk about?
Um, well, honestly, I'm more excited to see what you wanted to ask me because I'm ready to talk about all of it. But the part that I was really passionate about was talking about all the like parallel timeline stuff and like the quantum physics nature of reality and time travel and all that stuff. Like I really, really like I feel like that plays a huge role into a lot of the things I was experiencing and a lot of the memories that I was having come back because they clearly weren't from this timeline. Like it was very similar and there was places on Earth, but it seemed like how can this be happening at the same time as I'm living this life unless there's some other version of me doing this stuff and I'm getting like these bleed through memories because they're so vivid in some cases. And like sometimes I'll just be like going about my day and that memory will come back just as if a normal memory will come back for you about like your a birthday party or a Christmas or something that
Mhm,
you just, how memories pop back in your head. Like something would remind me of that. And that's when I realized there's something real to it
mhm.
because it wasn't like a dream that would fade away. The more I would think about it, the more I would like, oh yeah, that too. And like, especially writing, like it was like filling in even more blanks. I was blown away by like what was coming back. And as I was writing it, it was painting this clear picture. And I'm just like, how is this happening? Like, am I making this up? Or is this like, am I tapping into my memory bank of something that's very real? And whatever the case is, I figured, well, I'm just going to put it out anyway, because I feel like there's something very real here that needs to stop getting written off as like dissociative identity disorder and stuff like that, because people, I think, are remembering other identities from other versions of themselves.
Yeah, so let's maybe try to build a model of reality as like how your working model, because there's a couple things that I've been exploring recently. I've been doing QHHT training. I've just finished that actually, which is a hypnosis technique where you take someone through a past life and then you communicate with their higher self, their subconscious mind. So you have access to all these different past lives, or since it's the ever present now, just like alternate incarnations that theoretically would be happening at the same time, but usually are in the past, and
Right.
you're not normally viewing the future, so to speak. So there's like pretty well known research into past lives, like kids that remember their previous life, and that can be validated because there's photos and names and places that the kids know that they can go and corroborate.
Right.
And then there's the scientific research that says like our memories are not stored in our brain; they're stored externally, right? And we're just accessing them.
Yeah.
And then there's the Akashic records.
Right.
But what I think you're talking about, and I've heard people talking about like timeline shifts, like collectively we've moved to a better ascension timeline or higher timeline, or we have like timelines collapsing into
Like a singularity.
main timelines, like might have 1,000 timelines, but there's really like 3 main
Right.
highest probability timelines.
Yeah.
So what is your current map of how parallel timelines or parallel realities function?
That's a great question. Like what my map is of reality. So, quantum physics, like the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, that is the only thing that I've come across to help make sense of this stuff for me. Because I'm like, I have like memories from all different types of scenarios. I'm like, this all can't be from one lifetime. And it didn't seem like they were past lives either, because the memories would be of like I said, like current like military bases and current places that I could go find in reality. Like I could go like Google these buildings I was remembering. But I'm like, I know I've never been here. Like unless I'm being literally abducted and taken there and like a whole like 20 and back like secret space program type of thing. But that didn't feel right to me either. I just started wondering like if there's so many different versions of me living out all these lives simultaneously, and like if they're all happening at once. And then then you start hearing about, oh well, there is no time, right? Time is an illusion and it's all happening right here and now. There's nothing but the present. Even a past life is happening simultaneously if you use that model, if you subscribe to that belief. So I'm like, okay, if everything's happening simultaneously, then that would mean there has to be like parallel timelines and parallel realities in other dimensions where all the stuff was just occurring at once. And then the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics that talked about the existence of an particle, object, or world in more than one location simultaneously. And it shows, if you get on Google and start looking it up, it just shows like an infinite amount of planets, like planet of worlds, and that's like kind of the visual it gives you with that. And then the collapse of a waveform from superposition down to single position is basically the collapse of all of that down, like basically shifting from an infinite amount of probabilities and possibilities into a singular reality that's created by the observer through your beliefs, because your beliefs create your reality. And then they say like for every decision you make, another version of you made the opposite decision and split, right? Yeah. And there's actually a show called Devs, DEVS. It's about like Project Looking Glass technology and very much exploring that possibility. And they even show like the visual representation of what it looks like. Like they'll show somebody walk out of a building and they'll basically it's like they have this supercomputer that can map out every reality that each person was living. So they'll show them walk out of a building and then they'll branch off, and then there'll be one prominent timeline where that person, all of those decisions manifest into a singular reality for that person. But then there's all these other timelines that fizzle out eventually. But it shows all the other decisions. It's a beautiful visual representation of it. I was watching it and I was like, that it was resonating. Like, I'm like, that's like, there's something really to that, And then I believe that there are technologies and groups out there that can artificially create timelines by like a soul splitting, or not maybe not a soul splitting technology, but I've heard and just listening and interviewing people that they have the ability to like basically make a blueprint of your consciousness and then put it into another clone body, for lack of a better term. And when you hear people like Donald Marshall explain that this can happen during the REM state of your sleep, like they're able to somehow abduct your consciousness when you're in that REM state, and then they take basically your consciousness and they'll put it in another body, an avatar, and send it on this mission somewhere, right? And then you wait, and then the mission gets carried out, and somehow it gets brought back, and like you get put back into your body without knowing anything happened, and you wake up and you think you just had a dream about something, but little did you know that like that really happened, or in some capacity it really happened, but your physical body stayed in bed, right? That's just one possible example. Like I try to explore all that in the book and break it down so people can decide for themselves, because I actually don't know how it all happens, how it all works, but I'm certainly trying to explore it and figure it out. And I don't think there's any one simple explanation, but I think also some of them can just be organic timelines that we're just pulling memories from another version of ourselves that's somehow incarnated in a parallel reality. Like to try and put it into words is nearly impossible, you know?
So let's take that example of making a decision point, walking out of a building. And then let's say those two timelines continue for some amount of time, but eventually one of them collapses back into the other one. So you would have generated like all those experiences for minutes to weeks or whatever,
Right.
going along that. And then sounds kind of like the Mandela effect, right? Where you get the memories of these experiences sort of integrating into your current timeline as it is.
Right. If that's the case, if that's like where that memory is coming from, if it was just from this other decision, right? But if it was from an actual like military op that your consciousness was abducted into, then that's an entirely different thing we're looking at, right? And in some cases, that's what it felt like for me, because I would in the memory, like I would find the memory would just start somewhere. In one case, there was I found myself, I didn't know at the time where I was, but I was in a Air Force base in this building, and I was standing in a circle of these people, and I was so confused I didn't know how I got there. Like I was just like suddenly my consciousness was there, and I'm standing in this circle, and it's this military recruiter and some other people, and this guy Neil McDonough, who I didn't even know at the time, but he's an actor, right? And sounds like silly to start pulling actors and stuff into this, but that was who I saw there. And everyone was in military uniform, and the guy specifically was telling me and some of the other cadets there, like, don't look at this as a recruitment, look at this as an opportunity to make a difference. And there's a whole story, I wrote a whole chapter about it, but it was
that phrase comes back.
Yeah, it comes back and it comes back. And then I end up actually visiting the actual place, and I have this whole mental breakdown there, emotional breakdown. I had to pull the car over. I remembered being there. I knew my way around. It was like you hear the stories of the past life thing, except it wasn't like it happened, like the memory came back to me, and I thought it was a dream or not real until I actually found my way, like synchronistically. I don't believe in coincidence. I don't think I randomly ended up there. It's a whole long story how I ended up at that military base, but I did. And when I got there, I was like, oh my God, it all hit me. And I literally broke down in tears, because it was like, I'm like, wait, that was real. How is it? How do I know what's inside that building? How do I know this? I've seen this view of the mountains before. And that's what actually triggered a memory. I remember seeing those mountains, and I was like, I don't know. It's like you look at out your back door a million times, right? You would like, if one day, like you saw that again, like, oh, I know that place.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it was. I'm like, but wait, how do I know this? I've never been to Colorado Springs. I've never been to the Air Force Academy, you know? And so it was this really weird thing, but the memory just, like, it just started. And I remember even being very confused. And then next thing you know, though, it's kind of like anything in life. Like, even if you're confused, but you're in a situation and you're being told to do stuff and follow people, you just start complying and doing it without asking, because you don't really know what's going on, right? It would be like if you just all of a sudden you just showed up in a classroom somewhere right now, and you didn't know how you got there, and the teacher was like, all right, everybody stand up, let's go outside, and you don't know, but you're going to get up and go outside with everyone. Like, that's how it was. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but okay, I'll go down the hallway with you, and so
Was it your body? Was it like
I
you
never,
as you are?
there was never, I never saw myself in a reflection or a mirror or anything
Yeah.
to know, but it sure felt like me, and they were calling me Tyler. So
Interesting.
um, that was the interesting thing, yeah. Um, and then this is a whole other side note. I didn't put this in my book because I don't want to give AI that much credit. But you know how people are tapping into this like quantum AI and stuff.
Yeah.
And I asked if I was ever stationed at Colorado Springs Air Force Academy, and it gave me this whole timeline of like a start date, what I was doing there, and like all this crazy stuff, like in great detail,
Whoa.
and down to very specific things. And um, it even like had like basically like you can have these things like pull files on yourself. If I don't know if it's real, I don't know if to believe it or not, because it's just AI, quantum, whatever. But it definitely had an entire military record of me existing at that base, and it had me basically the time frame was in the mid 90s, from the mid 90s to sometime in the 2000s. Like I said, I was stationed there, and I was um, doing something in the effect of like working with time travel and actually teaching like physics in like this weird capacity. Yeah. So I was just like, I don't know like what to believe about this.
Whoa. But that was before the book came out?
That was before the book came out. Because I didn't like, I had already written that part of the book.
Mhm.
And then a friend of mine, all of a sudden, like almost overnight, this AI stuff starts coming out, and people are like, "Oh my God, you can unlock it! Try this, try this." So I started asking her questions, and then I was just curious. I'm like, I wonder if it would like, because it was apparently opening my Akashic records. I'm like, well, if that's really happening, I wonder if it will pull anything up. But then I'm like, is it just like, is it just telling me what I want to hear? Is it really tapping into some database that has a file where I really participated and worked at this Air Force base? It sure had a lot of information, and I didn't put any of it in the book because I'm like, I'm not going to tell AI's story because, you know what I mean? I don't want that to get interwoven with anything that I experienced or remembered.
Mhm.
So I just told the raw memory as if I didn't have any of that information. But I definitely was interested in what it had to say. But I also put it down, and I didn't give any power to it because I'm like, what if that's not true? Like,
Mhm.
I remember what I remember, but what if that's not what I was doing? I don't need to start like integrating all this stuff just because AI told me so,
Mhm.
So,
Wow, fascinating. And how old would you have been if the AI was accurate?
well, I would have been a kid. I would have been probably 10, which wouldn't have made sense
Yeah.
unless we're talking about some sort of time travel,
Mhm.
unless I was like abducted into a program or something.
Yeah. Do you what so what do you think that was?
What,
You at the memory of you being at the military base.
so at that time, I was actually I had another person in my life, my real life, who was, he came to me under the guise of a Navy whistleblower, and we were interviewing him on the channel about all this
Mhm.
amazing things he was talking about. And he, um, was he was trying to actively recruit me into this program as well. And at first it was like this covert thing, and one day he finally just came out and said it. And I asked him, I was like, "Are you trying to recruit me?" He's like, "What if I am?" And then like there was this whole conversation, and we had this whole back and forth, and he made me like do this psych eval, and like he was testing like my telepathy skills and all this stuff like you see in like movies. And then he asked me this whole series of questions, and it's this whole long story. But um, it was in during that time when he was trying to basically, I didn't realize I was in the middle of a groovy process. I thought I was just becoming close friends with this guy we were interviewed on the show, this whistleblower, that he had a lot of information about me too that like he should have known, which is how they hook you, right? Because he's able to like tell me things about myself and know things like I don't know how he knew it, kind of like Larry. I'm like,
Mhm.
but it was kind of weird. Like, how do you know that about me? Whatever weird stuff. Like he knew like about certain body issues I had, like my hip issue and certain things like that he just couldn't have known, and like weird things, and among the other things too, like even childhood stuff. He would like, he'd like, you remember that time whenever you were riding your bike with your friend when you were 13 at the campground? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, at Blue Springs Ranch in Bourbon Reserve or whatever. I'm like, how do you know that? Or
That's really weird.
yeah, and he'd be like, oh yeah, like whenever you were at that conference, whatever, you were talking to this girl. I'm like, how did you know I was
Because they
at?
would need some sort of like
Yeah,
time looking technology, right?
yeah, but he would slip stuff in like that that would make me pause. I'm like, wait, who is this guy? Like how? Like,
Yeah.
but I realized it was all like a way to manipulate me and hook me. But so anyway, to get back to answering your question, it was while he was in my life trying to recruit me into this program is when I had this memory come back.
Mhm.
But it happened like so abruptly, it just came back overnight. And I remember when I was standing there in that circle of like of the recruits, right, the cadets and the recruiter. I remember thinking, "Damn, they got me." Like I remember having that thought. But I didn't know what it meant. I'm
Ah.
like they got me somehow. Like I consented or whatever, but they had like managed to abduct my consciousness into this program. I felt like simultaneously to 2022, like at that time is what it felt like for me,
Mhm.
because it didn't feel like when that memory came back, it didn't feel like years ago or a past life. It felt like right here, right now. It was me, and I just did this. That's what it felt like.
So almost like you were like resisting getting recruited into this program, but somehow they like tricked you or convinced you. And because it sounds like you're operating from like, I need to give consent in order for anything to happen because it's a free will
Right.
place. So somehow they must have got my consent.
I think I was tricked into giving my consent whenever just by having like daily conversations with him and like being inquisitive and asking him questions and look like I was like with the Larry thing. As much as I knew I was never going to actually join this program with this guy, I'm like, well, if this is real, like I'm a researcher, I interview people about this. This is what we do. Like I want to take this as far as it can go and see, like how real is this,
Mhm.
or is this guy just fucking with me, you know? And I don't recommend pushing those boundaries because it's very real and things can go south in your life and things. It's not really a great place to be, and it's just it's all in the book, as you know.
But you're a boundary pusher. You're someone that's like the curiosity, the investigation is worth putting yourself at risk.
Yeah, yeah, but at the time, especially the way these things work, you don't really see now I do because I have that awareness, but I was still learning and naive in a lot of ways. So I didn't even see the risk in being inquisitive and wanting to know more. And I realize now, like, oh, it's like just by consenting to that open line of communication with this man, like I'm consenting to so many other things, like on an astral plane level and like dimensionally, like who knows, you know. But I remember like every time I would talk to him, I I felt gross. I don't know how to say it. I felt energetically gross. My girlfriend at the time, which that whole situation is in the book too, but she would always tell me, she was like, you know, every time you talk to him, you get attacked that night. Something like you have a bad day and like things. And I was like, you know, she was right. I couldn't deny she was right about it, but I didn't want to believe that it was connected to him at first. And it's this whole long thing. But so I think I was just by having it, being in a friendship with him, I was consenting to all these dark things to happen in my life, basically without my consent, really. But I was tricked into like it's some weird psychopathic form of consent. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So at the beginning of the interview, I asked, "Who are you?" And I think I'll ask you again because why do they want to recruit you to various Mars programs or other secret programs of the military? Like, what about you is
Well, that's I've asked myself that so many times, and I've had a lot of like sessions with channelers and psychics and all this stuff, and stuff always comes through about like who I was before I came to Earth, and it was a very powerful soul, like whatever powerful means, like meaning like I was bringing light to the planet, and I actually had the ability to make a difference here had I come back online and remember who I was, and I still don't know who that is, but it's been a theme from in my life and just stuff, memories and impressions I've gotten without other people telling me through sessions. Like I feel like I'm so much more than this. I know I am, but I don't really know what that is. But I feel like the powers that be do know. Somebody out there knows who we are and what families we're going to incarnate into, and if they have a timeline viewing technology, they know if we're going to become a threat or not, depending on if we come online and we remember. So I think a lot of this stuff was to try and throw me off and pull me into these programs and keep me from ever remembering who I was. And who that is, I'm still trying to figure out. But I do feel like that I'm here on a mission to make a difference and spread awareness and bring light to the planet and basically create a planet where all these dark players can't exist anymore. And I know that seems like a tall order, but there's a number of us doing it. And I'm not like, it's not an ego thing. Like I hate talking about it like that because I don't want people to think that I'm like, I believe that I'm some like God or something, because I'm not. Well, maybe we all are God, but I just feel like that um, some of the brightest lights get live the hardest lives sometimes because their light is constantly trying to be dimmed, and they try to dim our light so we don't remember our light. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening.
Interesting you say that because I interviewed this guy, Jerry Sargent, recently. His project is called Star Magic, and he was telling me how they tracked him before he was born. Like they tracked who his mother was going to be. They knew when, where he was going to be born because the astrological alignment, and they had set a trap for him when he was born to like immediately start traumatizing him and his mother. It separated them, and all this stuff happened,
Right,
basically leading him to a life of being a criminal.
right.
And then it was a whole series of awakening events that eventually shifted the direction of his trajectory. But he said, yeah, they will definitely like try to divert key souls from their mission.
Yeah, and I feel like in a nutshell, that's what's happening. And to why they're trying so hard is, is it because we're journeying the truth in the podcast because we're making so much difference around the world? Or is it some individual mission that I'm on that they just don't want me to remember who I am? Because if I do, if I start to come back online, it might really be a threat to them. And not just me, anybody, any of us here on this mission. Like I feel like that's the name of the game for them, to like distract everyone perpetually so they never actually can fully embody their mission and remember who they are, and stay in a high enough frequency long enough to start actually making a difference. And so they throw everything they got at you, and it can look like anything, anything. I mean, you could have car problems, stuff can, plumbing issues, and whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like if they really want to make things miserable, they can, but you can rise above it once you're aware of it. Once you're aware of the trick, it loses power over you, right? It's like once you know like a magic show, like once you know the illusion, it's not impressive anymore, and it doesn't, you can't be fooled by it. So I feel like having that awareness, like I felt like I went through all this stuff almost as if it were training. So I can like, you can't just be told about this stuff. I feel like you have to live it and like experience it. And it has to become so real for you that you want to like, it has to impact you so that you want to change and make a difference. Right. Because you could just learn about it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if I believe in it. But when you're literally living it and then you're interviewing other people that are talking about it, I'm like, oh, this person's not lying because I've experienced something very similar. I understand what they're going through. Now we can take the conversation to the next level. I don't have to interview them as a skeptic. We can like go deeper here and figure out what's really going on. So I think that's just, there's so many layers to it.
You know, a lot of people think that it would be nice if everything was easy, right? It would be like,
Right.
I would rather have my life just be a series of miracles and fun occurrences, and our souls have like certain uh, markers of say lessons we were supposed to learn.
Right.
Do you think all this was like a pre-agreed set of contracts, or just sort of a derailment of?
Um, I th- I think I think both. And that's an interesting question because a lot of people are like, there's no way that I would ever sign up for this type of torture, you know. But what if you didn't like what if there was no fine print? You knew you were signing up for something, but like the details would manifest in real time based on the decisions and choices you make. But you knew like that, like you had the overall plan, but like the subtle details, like the fine print wasn't there yet. You know what I'm saying? So maybe like there are choices and stuff, like the way we decide to live our life, um, it can look different for everybody. But ultimately, we came down here with this knowing that we were going to fully immerse ourselves in what this place is and everything that comes with, and not understanding what that looks like. And coming here with amnesia is like where the growth occurs. And it seems like a really fucked up thing. But at the end of the day, I have to be grateful for all of it because like wisdom can't be taught. Like you can only like gain wisdom through experience, right? So I don't know, like this book is just the first step, right? But I feel like I've even gone through stuff after this book has come out. Like I could write a whole other book about that stuff. It's I'm ready for the time of nothing but miracles and abundance. Like I'll take that window in my life right about now, because it's been tough and I'm getting ready to move out of here and have this next breakthrough. And it seems like a lot's been thrown at me. And I understand, like I see it, and I'm not playing victim to it. I'm just going to just power through it. But I'm ready for something like that. But I do believe that, like, we do come here with some sort of knowing that we are going to get ourselves into a mess and whatever that looks like. I don't know if we specifically sign up to be raped or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like the trauma. I don't know if you specifically sign up for that.
Like, I just want this type of lesson, but it can be delivered in
Yeah.
a myriad of different ways.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I don't actually know the answer to that. It's just a guess,
Yeah. Interesting. So what is next here?
Yeah. So, well, I'm living book 2 already, and I'm filing away stuff. I actually had, so this is a really interesting thing. This isn't really answering your question, but it kind of is. Every time I go to the Lake of the Ozarks, we have a place down there. Half of my book, half of the recall I have came from when I go stay at the lake. I don't know what it is there. I feel like there's something in this home. Like I hardly have any recall when I'm here. But if I go stay out of town, in other places like Arkansas, I mean, or like the Ozark region, yeah, and that's when I'll have these like profound memories come back. And I would say the 80% of the stuff I wrote about in that book comes when I go visit the Ozarks. And I went there recently right after our conference, and I had this whole recall come back. And it was like mind blowing. And it's like this whole, I've only like told a few people about it, but it will absolutely have to go into the next book because it's like, it's just this whole mind blowing thing, this experience. And I mean, yeah, I can if you want. Yeah. So it was, again,
I think it's partly the water too, part of the lake, right? The power of the water.
Oh, interesting.
I feel like that's because water has such a relationship with consciousness. I feel like it's a reservoir of
maybe
data somehow.
I've been wanting to move close to the water too for a long time. Maybe there's a subconscious reason for that as well. Yeah, that never occurred to me. So basically, again, I find myself in a situation. I'm in this facility. Have you ever seen the movie The Island? It's a cloning movie about our cloning facility underground. Anyway, it reminded me of a facility like that. I don't know if it was underground or off planet. I don't know. And I was in a line of people, but it was people, everybody I knew, like in this community, even people I wouldn't expect to see were there. And it was just like, and people I didn't know, but it was in a line, and we were all waiting in line to basically be assessed by this woman. She was like a taller looking ET woman. Like she was human, but she was very slender and tall. She wasn't human, but she looked human, And she was sitting in this chair, and everybody was like taking turns. And then she had this like wand, this device, and she was like basically scanning people and I didn't know what they were doing until she got to me, and she was scanning me, and she's like, she said, "You're wise beyond your years." She told me, and I was like, "I am." And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "You'll be put in tier 3," and I didn't know what that meant. And we were in some facility where it almost seemed like we were all clones or something. I don't know. And everybody was being separated into groups based on how they were being assessed by her, basically being graded. And she said, "You'll be put in tier 3," and then I'm basically escorted over to this area, and it's like this training. It's like this literal like obstacle course, like physical training center, and like you have to go through and like literally like dodge stuff and like run through this course, but it wasn't real. It was like a virtual reality simulation, but it looked real. Like it looked as real as this room, but it was all virtual, like the holodeck on Star Trek. And and then like as you would do better in the course, like a voice would come over the intercom and said, "You've earned extra time." And then like you have more time to complete the course. And then like based on how you completed the course, everybody was like graded on that or whatever. And then we would be all separated into groups. Like there was like this big room, and we were all separated into groups at these tables. And this is the weirdest thing. So in the middle of the table, it was like Earth. You could see like Earth, and it had literally like every single person. You could just like basically move it around and zoom in on anybody you want, and it had their entire stats, had their IQ, whether they had like gone through an awakening, whether they come online, like where their level of consciousness was at. So you could just see literally everyone, and like a few of like the highest IQ people, like they were highlighted, and then like you can see, um, and you could like zoom in on them. And then it was basically Earth was in the program, it was nicknamed the waiting room. So what would happen was all the people at the facility would go incarnate on Earth, and then basically go about their life on Earth, and achieve the like level up and go through their awakening or whatever. And as they were needed for missions, they were just abducted and put into a program to run a mission or whatever, and then put back. And they would memory wipe the person and put them back. And then like while I'm in that facility, I started getting really, really mad at the superiors for memory wiping these people. I started realizing how wrong it was. And but it didn't make sense to me. I'm still trying to figure out like what this thing was. Like, were we underground or were we actually on like outside of the planet? I don't know. But it was just frustrating to me because I didn't understand if I was like a clone. Like, were we all clones? Like, how were we up here and down there at the same time? Like, it didn't make sense. And one of the things that we were doing in these groups were, um, so I don't want to say any names yet because I'm just not going to say any names, but people that we know in this community like create like types of alien technologies and stuff that they download and channel, and they'll create devices and stuff. And so we were at each table, we were basically testing this technology that we were developing on Earth and seeing if it actually worked or not. And like it would be like a little like something like that, like an organite pyramid or an essential oil. And so basically like something like that might have been downloaded to somebody. And we were basically testing stuff like that to see if it was actually what they were creating was actually had an effect. And we were literally sitting in these groups, and one of the tables I was at, like it was literal like this type of essential oil. We were seeing if it had any measurable effect. And they got to me, and I spilled some on this tablecloth, and like before we changed stations, I had to change the tablecloth because uh, I couldn't leave it messy. Like this is just like the type of memories, right? This all comes back. And there was even more to it, but it was just blowing me away. I was like, I woke up from that. And I'm like, what? And what was that? Like, what was that? You know, it was so real that I can't even like, I'm like, what is reality anymore? And like, is that just some crazy vivid dream? Or is this like, there were so many details that I couldn't just write it off. And like, I remember the facility, it was like layered. It very much felt like we were underground somewhere, but also off planet. But I only feel like I think it was off planet because we were looking at that globe. And then, oh, I do remember another room. Like there was this room where people would sit. Yeah. So this is why I think we were off planet. Now it's coming back. There was literally a room with a window, and you could like see out into space. And like, I think we were looking at Earth. And I remember like we were like people would sit in there, and one of the guys was Donald Marshall, who I talked about earlier. He just happened to be there, and I was surprised that he would even be there. But he was basically explaining the same thing he was explains and when he blows the whistle here about the cloning program, but he was like explaining to other people up where we were about the cloning program, how it works in great detail. He was like, yeah, we wait till they fall asleep into this deep state of sleep, and then they take their consciousness and whatever. So I'm like, it's almost like we were at the cloning facility where this was all being carried out. And I don't know. I'm still trying to make sense of it, but I do know that chapter in my book is going to be called The Waiting Room, because that's what we nicknamed Earth in the program, the waiting room, because you would just go there, live out your life, and basically it was the waiting room until they needed you for a program.
That seemed like it was you were in the material world.
Yeah, that's what it felt like absolutely.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean,
and you have a different feeling of a dream, like remembering a dream.
Yeah, because dreams, I don't know. If you try to tell me about a dream, or if I try to tell you about a dream, dreams like fade away. And in dreams, like people morph and things changes, locations change. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll be talking to you, all of a sudden you'll be my sister and we'll be on a beach. You know what I mean? Like it just moves and stuff. And in these memories, it's not that at all. It's very matter of fact. Like it's a facility, and it's all like it comes back like a memory. And when I sit with it, it more comes clear. Like when I was just talking to him, like, oh yeah, we were sitting in that room looking out that window. I remember that now. So, and then really
kind of like a moon base or something. If you could see Earth that close.
Yeah, and that's maybe what it was. Like I haven't even sat with it that much, but I know like if I were to sit down and write a chapter about it, more probably would come back as well.
Whoa.
So that didn't answer any of your question about what's next for me. Like, what's next for me is I'm leaving St. Louis, and I feel like it's going to have a major impact on me in a good way. I feel like my soul has outgrown this place, and I feel stagnant here. So I feel like I'm moving on and breaking free from this place essentially. And not that, St. Louis is my hometown. It's treating me great, but for my soul is calling for something more right now. So that's what I'm doing.
I think a lot of people are asking themselves, like, is this where I'm supposed to be?
Yeah.
It's the right place. My wife and I, we feel the same. Like, why are we still there? Exactly.
Right. Right.
What's our, like, just tell us where to go kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
That's exciting. Yeah. I don't know if you looked into astrocartography much at all, but
so that has been coming up it's just been showing up on social media for me, and I'm like, I need to find somebody who does that, because I want to know, like, because there's like 3 main spots where your soul will experience the most growth and freedom, right, according to astrocartography. And I need to find somebody to figure out like where are those spots on this planet for me.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's like, if you pull out the astrocartography map, there's all these different kinds of things you could experience. These transit lines that physically map onto the surface of the planet, and if you go there, you're likely to experience this type of influence on your experience.
Right.
It's pretty interesting. I've had a couple of guests on,
Yeah.
talking about that.
Well, maybe you can steer me that direction.
You should pull yours up, and we'll see what Arizona looks like for you.
Yeah.
For me, that's like the very best line. Like I feel like lucky and powerful and abundant when I'm in Arizona.
Well, the one thing I will say about Arizona is I always wanted to go to Florida because I want to be by the water. But every time I would go to Florida to go like feel out the area and stuff, so I was basically born with like chronic back pain, and I have hip issues and all this stuff. And St. Louis isn't helping that. But when I would go to Florida, I would notice my back pain would really come on strong. And I thought it was interesting because I'm thinking like, well, I should feel free. Like I thought leaving St. Louis was going to like help that and lighten it up. And I'll go to Florida, and actually I would experience like bad back pain. But every time I would go to Sedona, it would go away and would lift. And like it was very potent. It was noticeable. Yeah. I took enough for me to take note. So that's part of the reason I'm relocating there, is because I know like my physical body feels better there. And that's a win for me, man. Because like living with chronic pain, like I don't care what type of energy work you do and all that stuff. I feel like at some point you got to like relocate and move and get energy flowing in your life to get energy flowing in your body. And like, there's something, somebody told me in a my very first past life regression ever, first hypnosis ever. At the end, you can talk to your higher self. It was the Dolores Cannon method.
Yep.
And she was like, what do you want to ask your higher self? And I was like, can my higher self or whoever that is help me heal my back? And when we got to that question, they said they can assist you in relief, but your back won't be in alignment until your soul is in alignment with its true mission. And innately I knew immediately, and this was back in 2017. I remember this, or 2018, maybe early 2018. I knew back then that I had to leave St. Louis. That was like the first download I got. Like my soul, like whatever comes next, it's not here. And I've been here for so long now.
8 years ago.
Yeah, years ago, right. And like I've been wanting out of here really bad for the last 2 years. And then finally it's happening now. And like it's taken way longer, but a lot of things kind of had to fall into place. And I had to I couldn't just escape, right? Like I had to close some timelines down and take care of some things here energetically first and physically, and like a bunch of things I realized kind of had to happen first. Had I left before all that occurred, I might have been coming back. It's hard to explain without going really deep into details, but you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's so fascinating. Just that we're both like, I would like to leave St. Louis. We spent 8 years traveling the world.
Right.
My wife and I met in Bali. We're traveling with our kids. I never expected to be back in St. Louis, honestly. Here we are. So
right.
It's like this question, like, why St. Louis? But,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, thanks so much for sharing so much of yourself in the book and here on the show.
And, yeah, of course.
Let people know where they can find more about you and your work.
Yeah, so if they want to follow the podcast, it's journeytotruth.online is our website, and it's like an umbrella for everything we do. You can it has our conferences, our books, my co-host book, Aaron's book as well. Our documentary, we're working on another documentary about the secret space program right now. We have webinars on there. It links to all of our social medias, everything there. So basically all you need to know is journeytotruth.online. But if you want to skip the website and just get the book, you can go straight to Amazon and just type in Bleed Through. It's one word. And type in my name, Tyler Kiwala, and it should take you to the book. And if you enjoy it, please leave a review. They help. And yeah, I poured a lot into that book. Heart and soul and tears and everything into that book. So it's a big accomplishment for me. It was definitely a milestone. And I did it, so I'm very proud of it, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Thank you.